The first time I heard the whimper, I thought it was the wind threading through the teeth of broken buildings. It wasn't. It was Kolya. He was folded in half, knees to his chest like a child who'd forgotten how to be anything else. I almost didn't recognize him or machine gunner, broad-shouldered, always chewing sunflower seeds. The bastard who joked about death like it owed him money. Now he was bleeding out from the stomach, making these animal sounds. Raw, guttural, like his body was trying to scream but didn't have the breath to finish the job. There was shrapnel in my face. I could feel it, like splinters of winter lodged in my cheek. The left side of my vision kept flickering, blood in my eye, or maybe something worse, I didn't know. But I crawled to him anyway, on all fours like a dog. My rifle was gone. My fingers, trembling and red, weren't working right. I remember grabbing Kolya's hand. It was still warm. That warmth haunts me more than the screaming. I didn't cry then. Not when I packed his wound with dirt and pressure bandages. Not when I realized the tourniquet was useless for gut wounds. Not even when I told him he'd be okay, knowing damn well he wouldn't be. I just kept talking to fill the air, my voice thick with lies and dust. And Kolya? He just looked at me with these wide, glassy eyes. Like he saw something behind me. I used to think you cry during war. But no, you cry when it's over. When the echoes stop. When the silence finally screams back. The worst silence came 3 days later, under the ruins of a collapsed administration building outside Bakhmut. We were pinned, 6 of us left from a platoon of 32. The sky was a dull bruise, low and yellow. Artillery smoke hanging like dead skin over the city. I had a busted rib, maybe 2. Every breath scraped against my lungs like sandpaper. But I couldn't stop thinking about Kolya, about how his blood pooled into the cracks of the concrete like rainwater, about how I couldn't even close his eyes. My hands were shaking too much. I remember the exact moment it shifted. The moment I stopped thinking like a soldier and started thinking like a man who might not make it home. It was when I found the photo again. It was wedged in the lining of my helmet. A torn piece of a family picture. My sister, Anna, holding up a birthday cake. 7 candles. I was supposed to call that day the 14th of March. I never did. The shelling started before I could even unlock my phone. I kept the photo like a talisman, even as the ink bled into the paper from the sweat and grime. I don't know why, but looking at her smile in that moment, it cracked something inside me. They say pain makes you tougher. They lie. Pain makes you smaller. It folds you inward, tightens your world until all you can see is the next breath, the next second, and sometimes, even that's too far. Our radio was busted, of course. Static. Always static. The last message we got before the antenna took a hit was from HQ telling us to hold position until extraction. Extraction. That word. It sounds clean. Surgical. Like someone will swoop in with a bird and a stretcher and lift you out of hell. But nobody came. So we waited. Ate the last of the rations, dried potatoes and bitterness. Shared water from a cracked canteen that tasted like metal and mold. We played games with the shadows, counted distant mortars like fireworks, and when the waiting got too loud, I started to write. Not with a pen. I didn't have one. I wrote in my head, stories, memories. I recited Anna's lullaby under my breath, the one she used to sing when the power went out in our village. Lay your head, little brother, stars will guard your sky. Sometimes, when the shelling stopped long enough, I could almost hear her voice. But the world never stays silent for long out here. One night, no moon, no stars, just the buzzing dark. I saw movement, a flicker near the 3rd floor stairwell. I signaled with 2 fingers. Vadim nodded. We moved like ghosts, breath shallow, rifles raised. It was a kid. Couldn't have been more than 17. Russian uniform, but loose like it wasn't really his. He was shaking, holding an AK, like it was a shovel. His face was all bones and dirt, eyes wide with a kind of terror that mirrored my own. We locked eyes. Neither of us fired. There was this beat, like the war paused, holding its breath. Then he ran. Vadim raised his gun. I pushed it down. I don't know why I did it. Maybe I saw Kolya in him. Maybe I saw myself. Maybe I was just tired of killing. Vadim didn't speak to me for the rest of the night. The next morning, he stepped on a mine. I heard the click before the blast. A sharp, unnatural sound that cuts through even the heaviest air. By the time I reached him, his legs were gone. He looked at me, bleeding and broken, and whispered, "Don't let me die here." I tried. God, I tried. I used every trick from my combat medic training. Packed the stumps, jabbed morphine into his thigh, screamed for help that wouldn't come. His grip on my sleeve never loosened, even as his breathing grew ragged, even as his pupils started to glass over. His last word was my name. Not mother, not home, not why, just my name, as if he needed to remind me I was real. Still here, still human. The silence after Vadim died was unbearable, not because it was quiet, but because it wasn't. His blood dripped onto the concrete in rhythmic taps. A loose ceiling panel swayed above me, creaking with every gust, and deep in my ears, that high-pitched hum wouldn't stop like the war had planted a siren inside my skull. I sat beside him for what felt like hours. My hands were soaked in his blood, and I didn't wipe them off. There was nowhere clean left. Not on my uniform, not on my soul. I thought about pulling the pin on a grenade and just ending it. That would have been easy, quick, but something kept me anchored. Not duty, not survival instinct. Something smaller, dumber. I wanted to see my sister again. That fragile little ember burned hotter than any shell fire. 2 days later, the extraction finally came. A drone spotted our position, one of the newer ones, quiet, efficient. It dropped a supply package first. Then came the voices on the new channel. Ukrainian, our guys. They were close. A mechanized unit pushing east had circled back, found the signal. They said we had 15 minutes. By then, it was just me and Serhiy, a comms guy with a busted leg and dead eyes. We hadn't spoken since Vadim. Not much to say. We were ghosts, squatting in the ruins of other ghosts. When the APC arrived, I didn't cheer. I didn't even move right away. I just stared at the smoke curling off the barrel of my rifle, thinking about that boy I didn't shoot, wondering if he was still alive, if he was burying his own Vadim somewhere across the line. The medics lifted me in like I weighed nothing. One of them a young guy, maybe 20 twoinst when he saw my face. Jesus, he muttered. He's leaking metal, shrapnel, still embedded. My face had swollen, purpling around the left eye. I looked like half a corpse, felt like one too. They gave me something for the pain. Morphine, maybe? Everything softened. My thoughts drifted in and out of focus like fog over a frozen lake. As we rolled out of the combat zone, I looked back one last time. At the building where Kolya bled out, at the crater where Vadim died, at the shattered world I'd called home for 6 endless weeks. And that's when I cried. Not loud, not dramatic, just quiet. The tears came slow, carving clean lines through the soot and blood on my face. I turned away so the medic wouldn't see. But he did. He didn't say a word, just nodded, like he knew. You don't cry in war, you cry when it's over. Or at least, when your part is. They patched me up at the field hospital west of Kramatorsk, took the shrapnel out, stitched what they could. My left eye's never been the same blurred, like the world's always just out of reach. But I got to keep it, which I suppose is a win. They gave me clean sheets, soup, a toothbrush. It felt wrong, too soft. I kept waiting for a mortar to come through the ceiling, for Kolya's laugh, or Vadim's boots, or the scream of a drone overhead. But it never came. Only the quiet. That quiet crushed me. I didn't sleep for 3 nights. Not properly. I saw their faces every time I closed my eyes. Heard the wet sounds of dying, the gravel in Vadim's voice. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't find the air. Couldn't make my throat work. The doctors said I had PTSD, gave me pills, told me I was strong. They didn't know what the hell they were talking about. Strength isn't surviving. It's remembering. Choosing to carry the weight instead of dropping it. Every morning now, I look at that photo of Anna. She's older now. I missed 2 of her birthdays. She writes me letters, draws little stars in the margins like she used to. Tells me she's proud, that I'm her hero. I don't feel like one, but maybe that's what makes it real. I wear my uniform when I visit the graves. Kolya, Vadim, and the others whose names are etched into the black stone like broken prayers. I bring sunflower seeds for Kolya. A rusted bolt for Vadime used to keep them in his pocket for luck. I talk to them, not every day, just sometimes. When the wind's right, when the silence starts pressing too hard, I don't know if I'll ever go back to the front. Part of me wants to. The other part knows I'd never make it out again. At least, not the part that's still human. But I carry them with me, in the limp in my stride, in the blurred eye, in the quiet ache that wakes me at 3 a.m. with the taste of dust still in my throat. Some wounds don't bleed. They echo. And some tears aren't shed in battle. They wait, in the cracks of your armor, behind the grit in your eyes. They wait for silence. Because you don't cry in war, not until it's over. Sometimes the journalists come. Cameras, microphones, clean shoes. They sit at angles, carefully, like the floor might stain them. They use the word hero a lot. You can hear the headline buzzing behind every question. They sat me down once, propped me up on the edge of the bed, IV still in my arm, painkillers numbing the worst of it. My face was stitched, but swollen left eye almost shut. They framed it just right, made sure the flag pin on my chest was visible. Are you proud of your service? I didn't answer at first. My mouth was dry. My hands kept shaking. They asked again, slower this time, like I hadn't understood. Am I proud? I remember looking past the camera, out the window. The wind was moving through the trees, real trees, not splinters of timber blown apart by artillery. I watched a leaf drift down. It was yellow, delicate, the kind of thing you don't notice in the trenches. I'm alive, I said. The reporter smiled, as if that meant yes. But that's not what I meant. I meant I'm alive, and I have to carry every death with me. Pride has nothing to do with it. They asked about the moment I was wounded. I told them the facts, location, time, number of wounded. Left out the part about Collier's hand slipping out of mine. Left out the sound of Vadim's last breath. Left out the photo in my helmet and the boy I didn't shoot. Some things aren't for cameras. After the interview, a nurse came to change my bandages. She was gentle, didn't flinch at the sight of torn flesh. Her hands were steady. She had this small tattoo on her wrist, just a tiny dove. I stared at it while she worked. You've seen a lot, she said quietly. I didn't answer. I just nodded. She didn't ask anything else. That silence was worth more than the whole interview. At night, the pain meds wear off. That's when the ghosts come. Not just Kolya and Vadim. Others. A kid with half a face crawling toward his rifle. A woman in a basement whispering for her son. The Russian soldier, I let go his eyes, still wide, still asking why. I don't sleep. Not really. I close my eyes and rehearse moments. Try to change them in my head. Save them. Undo them. I never can. The doctors say I'll recover. That's what they call it. Recovery. But nobody tells you what to do with all the pieces you bring back. The bits of yourself you left in shell craters and blood-soaked concrete. The silence you wear like a second skin. I keep the photo of my sister taped above my bed. It's wrinkled now, a smudge across her smile. I stare at it for hours some nights, just trying to remember the sound of her voice, the real one, not the one that echoes in my morphine dreams. She's coming to visit next week. I don't know what I'll say to her. How do you talk to someone who still lives in color when your world turned to ash? But I'll try, because maybe that's the hardest part of surviving, learning how to come back without dragging the war behind you like a shadow. The leg will heal, the scars will fade, the medals will gather dust on some shelf. But the silence never really ends. And sometimes, when it's dark enough and quiet enough, that's when the tears come. Not because I'm weak, but because it's finally safe to feel again. You don't cry in war. You cry when it's over, or when you finally realize it isn't. They released me on a Thursday. I walked out of the military hospital with a cane in one hand and a discharge paper in the other. The world outside felt wrong, too bright, too normal. The breeze didn't smell like cordite anymore. It smelled like cut grass and car exhaust. It made my stomach turn. My sister was waiting by the front gate. She looked smaller than I remembered. Not physically just, softer. Like peace had wrapped itself around her in a way I no longer knew how to wear. When she saw me, she ran, hugged me like she could hold me together if she just squeezed hard enough. I didn't cry. Not then. But when she pulled back and touched my face, when she said, "You're home," so quietly I almost missed it. That's when the crack widened. We rode home in silence. I stared out the window at streets I used to know. Shops, trees, a playground with rusted swings. Everything unchanged. Everything wrong. I wanted to scream at the world for moving on, for forgetting the sound of incoming fire, for not knowing who Kolya was, for never seeing Vadim bleed out with his hand in mine. But I didn't scream. I sat still, and when we got home, I went into my old room. It hadn't changed. Same books, same posters, same faint scent of dust and soap and something like safety. But I was a different man standing in it. That night, I stood in front of the mirror for a long time. I traced the scar down the side of my face, felt the stiffness in my leg, looked into my own eyes and tried to find the boy who used to smile in photos. He wasn't there, but someone else was. Someone quieter, heavier, still breathing. I lay down on my bed, staring at the ceiling, and for the first time since the hospital, I let it all come. The sobs, the broken prayers, the memories I'd buried under blood and dirt and silence. I cried for Kolya's unfinished jokes, for Vadim's bolt in my pocket, for the boy I didn't kill, for the part of me still lying in the rubble outside Bakhmut. I cried not because I was weak, but because I was still human. And maybe that's what they'll never tell you in the briefings or the medals or the headlines, that the hardest part of war is surviving it, living with it, carrying it into quiet rooms and family dinners and sleepless nights. But I do. I carry it all, because somebody has to remember, because forgetting would be the final death, and because deep down, beneath the scars and silence and steel, I still believe in what we were fighting for. Not glory, not vengeance. Home. You don't cry in war. You cry when it's over. And when you finally do, you cry for everyone who never got the chance.